Hey guys! Tonight, we're curling up by the most legendary fireplace in existence, Hestia's Hearth, the coziest corner of Mount Olympus. Picture this: a flickering golden glow so warm it makes the sun jealous, the scent of cedar and ambrosia lingering in the air, and the soft crackle of divine flames that never burn out. You're surrounded by cushions so plush they'd make a cloud feel inferior. And the vibe is so welcoming even Ares, god of war, forgets to pick fights here. But fair warning, once you hear about this place, your own living room might feel tragically mortal in comparison. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. Nothing like a global campfire chat, right? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It all starts with a spark, literally. Hestia, firstborn of the Titans Kronos and Rhea, doesn't get the flashy myths of her siblings. No epic battles, no scandalous affairs, just the steady, quiet task of keeping the sacred flame alive. But here's the thing. That flame is Olympus. It's the first thing lit when the gods claim their celestial real estate, and the last thing that would flicker out if they ever fell. You'd think a goddess of the hearth would play second fiddle, but without her, Zeus's lightning bolts would just be dramatic pyrotechnics with no home to return to. Historians still argue whether Hestia's role was diminished over time or if she chose to step back. But one thing's clear: every god from Aphrodite to Hades respected that fire. There's a fringe theory that the flame wasn't just symbolic. It was a literal tether to divine power, like the cosmic version of your Wi-Fi router. Lose connection, and suddenly Zeus is buffering mid-thunderclap. And let's talk about that fire itself. Unlike mortal flames, Hestia's didn't just burn, it hummed, a low, resonant frequency that soothed even Artemis after a long day of turning hunters into unfortunate forest decor. Modern asides won't do it justice, but imagine the coziest fireplace you've ever seen. Then infuse it with the warmth of a hug from someone who genuinely loves you. That's the hearth. No wonder Dionysus, god of wine and chaos, would sober up just to sit by it. The golden glow of Hestia's hearth isn't just light. It's alive. You've seen firelight dance before, but this flame moves with intention, curling around chilled fingers like a friendly cat, and radiating heat that sinks straight into your bones. It doesn't flicker so much as breathe, pulsing gently in time with the slow, steady rhythm of the cosmos itself. Mortal fires spit and crackle unpredictably, but Hestia's blaze is a study in perfect control. Warm enough to melt the frost from Hermes's winged sandals, yet never so hot that Apollo's sunburnt shoulders can't lean in close. And the color. Forget orange or yellow. This flame burns in hues you didn't know existed. A shimmering bronze gold that paints every god's face in flattering light. A fact Aphrodite exploits mercilessly. When the muses sing here at night, the fire dims respectfully to a deep blue ember glow, like the world's most atmospheric mood lighting. There's a reason no torches were allowed in the hearth's immediate vicinity. Compared to this, they'd look like sad birthday candles. Historians still argue whether the flame's properties were magical or metaphorical, but one 4th century BCE scroll claims it could purify lies from a man's tongue, which explains why Ares always sat furthest away. Meanwhile, a fringe Babylonian text insists the fire wasn't flame at all, but liquid sunlight stolen from Helios's chariot. Either way, its most charming quirk was how it adapted. For Demeter, it smelled like fresh baked bread. For Poseidon, like salt spray. And for Hades, well, he wasn't invited often, but on his rare visits, witnesses swore the logs burned black with silver edges. The hearthstone itself was no ordinary rock. Carved from a single block of Thessalian marble veined with gold, it stayed perpetually warm to the touch. Not scorching, just comfortably toasty, like a laptop that's been streaming your favorite show for exactly the right amount of time. The gods would press their palms against it during debates, drawing patience from its heat. Modern geologists would have a field day with its thermal conductivity, but good luck getting a sample. Hephaestus once tried chiseling off a piece for research and spent the next week finding his tools mysteriously glued to every surface in his workshop. You'd think the king of the gods would have better places to be than curled up by a fireplace. But Zeus, yes, that Zeus, the lightning-chucking, shape-shifting, perpetually philandering ruler of Olympus, had a not-so-secret soft spot for Hestia's hearth. Between thunderbolt target practice and dodging Hera's wrath, he'd sneak away to slump into the hearth's plushest cushion, letting the fire's hum drown out the endless dramas of godhood. No agendas, no sycophantic nymphs, just the crackle of sacred logs and maybe a stolen nap while disguised as a particularly contented house cat, a form he regrettably forgot once, leading to an awkward moment when Hera tried to shoo that mangy stray off the divine couch. The hearth was Olympus's great equalizer. Here, Athena's strategic genius carried no more weight than Dionysus's tipsy ramblings about vineyard aesthetics. Even Aphrodite traded her calculated allure for genuine laughter, once braiding Hephaestus's beard by firelight while he pretended not to notice. And Hermes? The notorious trickster became oddly docile near the flames, though he still couldn't resist using the glowing embers to roast stolen ambrosia marshmallows over. Historians still argue whether this egalitarian vibe was Hestia's doing or simply the fire's magic. But temple carvings suggest even minor deities like the Horai, goddesses of seasons, got prime seating. A fringe Etruscan scroll claims the hearth's warmth temporarily muted divine powers, which explains why Zeus never summoned storms here, though cynics whisper he just didn't want Hera tracking his lightning like cosmic GPS. The best part? No thrones allowed. Hestia enforced a strict no-hierarchy policy near her flames, so Poseidon's trident leaned against the wall like a forgotten umbrella, and Artemis's silver bow became a glorified coat rack. For all their grandeur, the gods were, at heart, creatures who craved simplicity, and nothing's simpler than the primal comfort of good heat, good company, and the knowledge that not even the fates would dare interrupt hearth time with their ominous snipping. Imagine you're a mortal who somehow, against all cosmic odds, stumbles into Olympus during one of Hestia's open hearth nights. Maybe you're a shepherd, who followed a suspiciously friendly goat up the wrong mountain, or a poet who accidentally rhymed yourself into divine invitation. One moment, you're shivering in mortal terror. The next, warmth. Not just physical, but the kind that unknots your soul. The hearth's glow doesn't blind like Apollo's chariot. It welcomes, softening the edges of godly radiance until even Zeus's infamous scowl looks almost approachable. These rare mortal visitors left accounts that ruined fireplaces forever for the rest of humanity. The playwright Aeschylus allegedly spent one night here and subsequently burned all his torches in protest of their inferior flicker. A Spartan girl named Marine, according to fragmentary temple inscriptions, claimed the hearth's warmth cured her winter cough, and also made her local bonfires smell like wet dog in comparison. But the real kicker? The fire remembered people. Return visitors swore the flames leaned toward them in recognition, and one Thessalian farmer's diary insists his grandfather's ghost appeared briefly in the embers to scold him about crop rotation. Historians still argue whether these mortal encounters were planned tests or happy accidents, though a clay tablet from Pylos suggests Hestia kept a formal guest log. Third moon, nice poet, terrible liar skills. The fringe theory, that the hearth was secretly a backdoor to apotheosis. Ordinary humans who absorbed enough of its warmth allegedly lived decades longer, their hair retaining a telltale golden sheen. And here's the cruelest twist. No one ever got cold again. Not properly, at least. Those who'd basked by the divine flame reported feeling phantom warmth during mortal winters, as if their bones had been... Hestia never raised her voice. She didn't wield lightning like Zeus or command the seas like Poseidon. Yet when she stirred the embers with her bronze poker, even the rowdiest Olympians fell silent. There was power in that quiet, the kind that made war gods pause mid-boast and love goddesses set aside their vanity mirrors. You'd think the deity of hearth and home would be background decor at best, but Hestia's influence ran deeper than any of her flashier siblings. The secret? She listened. While other gods demanded grand sacrifices, Hestia asked only for a pinch of salt tossed into household flames. While Athena debated battle tactics and Dionysus incited revelry, Hestia kept the home fires burning, literally. And when divine tempers flared, which, let's be honest, was basically Olympus's default state, her hearth became neutral ground. Ever seen Ares and Athena share a meal without stabbing the table? Only happened here, where the fire's glow took the edge off their rivalry like celestial chamomile tea. Historians still argue whether Hestia's pacifying effect was innate divinity or sheer psychological brilliance. After all, it's hard to stay angry when your toes are toasty. But a fragmentary Orphic hymn claims her poker wasn't just a tool. When tapped against the hearthstone 3 times, it emitted a tone that unspooled discord like tangled yarn. Fringe cults even worshipped iron pokers in her name, though Hephaestus grumbled this was taking metaphor too far. The real proof of her power? The seating chart. In a pantheon obsessed with status, Hestia's cushions followed no hierarchy. Aphrodite might lounge where a minor river god had sat moments before, and no one batted an eye. The smell alone could make a god weep. Fresh baked ambrosia bread crusted with honey from Athena's sacred bees. Figs so ripe they burst like summer on the tongue. And wine warmed in the embers until its steam carried whispers of vineyards older than time. This wasn't just divine snacking, it was culinary alchemy, where every bite tasted like your fondest memory. Even Demeter, who invented harvests, would sneak extra portions when she thought no one was looking. The hearth transformed eating into ritual. Nectar wasn't chugged from golden goblets here. It was sipped from humble clay cups that stayed miraculously unbreakable. A necessity, given Dionysus' toasting enthusiasm. Cheese melted over fire-roasted apples became the god's guilty pleasure, though Zeus insisted it was purely strategic carb loading before thunderbolt hurling. And the marshmallows? Legend says they were originally cloud fragments stolen by Hermes, which explained why they never burned, just turned into puffier, sweeter versions of themselves. Historians still argue whether these feasts fueled divinity or simply reminded the gods of mortality's pleasures. But a Cypriot fresco shows Ares attempting to flip an ambrosia pancake, an act of such shocking domesticity that scholars debate if it's satire. The fringe detail? Those charred crumbs left in the hearth became oracular tools. Delphi's lesser-known bakery oracle read them like tea leaves. The real magic was in the sharing. Food tasted better when passed hand to hand, a truth even the famously solitary Artemis acknowledged when she begrudgingly accepted Hestia's honey cakes. For all their power, the gods were at their most relatable here. Apollo dropping olive pits into the fire to make them pop. Hera actually laughing. Hephaestus forgetting to be bitter as he licked caramelized nectar off his fingers. No, you might assume the god of volcanoes and forges would have the best fires on Olympus. But Hephaestus's workshops, for all their dazzling pyrotechnics, never achieved what Hestia did with a single well-placed log. His flames roared. Hers sank. His spat sparks that scarred marble. Hers gently toasted the perfect marshmallow every time. It wasn't a competition, though if it were, even Aphrodite would bet on Hestia. The difference? Control. Where Hephaestus's forges embodied raw creative chaos, the hearth was warmth distilled to its essence, like comparing a fireworks display to sunrise through autumn leaves. This dichotomy played out in divine preferences. When gods needed armor, off to Hephaestus's smoky workshops. But after a long day of smithing, even the forge god himself would limp to the hearth, letting the fire smooth the kinks from his shoulders. The Muses wrote entire epics about this contrast, volcanic fury versus domestic embers, both necessary but only one universally beloved. Ares learned this the hard way when he tried to impress Aphrodite by gifting her a lava-heated foot warmer. She used it exactly once before, accidentally leaving it in Hestia's care. Historians still argue whether the two fire deities collaborated or coexisted warily. A shattered amphora shows them back to back, Hephaestus hammering a sword, Hestia stirring a pot, while a satyr play fragment jokes about stealing embers between workshops. The fringe theory? That Hestia's ashes held healing properties. Wounded warriors allegedly sought them for burns, though getting close. When winter's chill crept up Olympus's slopes, even the gods, cloaked in their divine radiance, felt it. The solstice wasn't just a celestial event, it was Hestia's grand debut, the one time her hearth became the undisputed heart of the pantheon. Picture it. The hall decked with Demeter's frost-resistant garlands, Apollo grudgingly dimming his chariot to let the firelight shine brighter, and Zeus himself hanging mistletoe. Purely for diplomatic reasons, he'd insist, though Hera kept tally. This was no mortal Yule. This was the original seasonal coziness, where ambrosia eggnog never curdled, and the fire burned in festive hues of ruby and gold. Gift-giving took on mythic proportions. Athena once presented Ares with a peace treaty. Really just an empty scroll, but the thought counted. Aphrodite gifted Artemis a kissing practice target, a deer-shaped pillow that was immediately arrow-pierced. But the real treasures were Hestia's own offerings. Hand-knitted socks from celestial wool, never itchy, and the rarest spice blend in existence, stardust and cinnamon. Recipients guarded these like dragon hoards. Dionysus still claims his pair got stolen by a very stylish satyr. Historians still argue whether these exchanges inspired mortal traditions or merely mocked them. A Spartan vase shows gods playing a game with dice made of frozen nectar, the original white elephant gift. Meanwhile, fringe Nordic texts insist the Yule log tradition began when a wandering demigod tried, and failed, to recreate Hestia's fire with mundane oak. The solstice's pièce de résistance, the unburnt Yule log, a cedar chunk enchanted to smolder decoratively for exactly 12 days. Not all stories told by the hearth's glow were joyful. Some flames burned blue with heartache. This was where lovesick gods came to nurse their wounds, where Artemis once sat silently braiding her hound's fur for hours after Orion's death, where even Apollo's golden laughter faltered, remembering Hyacinthus. The fire didn't judge, it simply held space for grief, its embers pulsing like a steady heartbeat in the darkness. The hearth witnessed Olympus's most private tragedies. Persephone would linger here before her annual descent to the underworld, soaking up warmth like a solar battery against Hades's chill. Hephaestus traced his scarred hands through the flames after Aphrodite's latest betrayal, as if testing whether anything could still burn him. And once, only once, Hera slipped in alone at dawn, whispering confessions to the coals that even the fire dared not repeat. Historians still argue whether the hearth absorbed emotions or merely reflected them. A Corinthian playwright claimed its smoke carried unspoken regrets to the fates' ears, while a radical sect of Stoics insisted sitting near it could cauterize the soul's wounds. The fringe theory? That the fire occasionally spat out semi-precious stones, teardrops crystallized by divine sorrow. But the most haunting tale belongs to a mortal, Psyche, who snuck in freezing from Eros's abandoned palace. The flames showed her fleeting visions of her lost love, not as punishment, but as reminder. When she finally left, Hestia pressed a single ember into her palm. It didn't burn. It never went out. And centuries later, archaeologists would find tiny, ever-warm stones in temples of love, still whispering with hearth magic. Tucked between the hearth's crackling logs and a particularly fluffy divan lay Hestia's best-kept secret, a library so cozy it made Alexandria's seem sterile. Shelves carved from aromatic cedar held scrolls that rearranged themselves based on the reader's mood, poetry drifting closer when hearts were heavy, epic sagaries inching forward when adventure called. The collection included such rarities as 101 uses for nectar, besides drinking, by a young Dionysus, and Athena's embarrassingly earnest teenage treatise, Why Owls Are the Superior Species and You're Wrong. But the real treasure, Zeus's adolescent attempts at verse, hastily misplaced here after his coronation. Sample line, "Your lightning eyes electrocute my soul." But in a good way? Reading here was a multisensory experience. Scrolls warmed in your hands like living things, their ink shimmering bronze in the firelight. Some even emitted ambient sounds. Hera's marriage contracts faintly hummed wedding marches, while Poseidon's tsunami diagrams left your fingertips slightly damp. Hermes's prank manifestos were kept chained to the table after one incident involving animated origami harpies. But most tomes circulated freely, accumulating marginalia from deities across millennia. Apollo's snarky annotations in Ares' battle plans remain legendary. Alternative strategy. Try thinking next time. Historians still argue whether this was a true library or merely divine clutter storage. A fragmentary inventory lists 7 shelves of prophecies, mostly illegible, while a Cretan gossip column claims, when autumn painted Olympus in fiery hues, Demeter and Hestia became an unstoppable duo, the goddess of harvest and the keeper of the hearth, transforming the hall into a seasonal buffet that would put any mortal Thanksgiving to shame. The air hung heavy with the scent of roasted squash stuffed with spiced grains, pomegranate molasses glazing slow-cooked meats, and fresh bread so perfectly crusted it sounded like fall leaves crunching underfoot. This wasn't just dining. It was edible alchemy, where Demeter's bounty met Hestia's transformative flames. The harvest feasts followed sacred rhythms, apples dipped in celestial honey for remembrance, walnuts cracked between Hephaestus's enchanted tongs for resilience, and a communal pot of stew that never emptied, though Dionysus once tried to disprove this by eating 7 bowls consecutively. He regretted it. Even Persephone's annual departure was marked with a pomegranate seed ritual. Those who partook claimed to taste underworld pomegranates all winter, their lips stained faintly purple like twilight. Historians still argue whether these meals were symbolic or literally sustaining. An Eleusinian scroll describes bread that fed the soul directly, while a comic play depicts Ares attempting to weaponize a pumpkin pie. It retaliated. The fringe theory? That leftovers left by the hearth became sentient. Athens' famed talking loaf of 432 BCE was allegedly a Demeter-Hestia collaboration gone rogue. The true magic lay in the guest list. For these feasts, Hestia invited not just gods, but their favorite mortals. Heroes got VIP seating, yes, but so did unknown Hermes, the eternal trickster of Olympus, considered Hestia's hearth his greatest challenge. Not because it was guarded, it wasn't, but because every prank he attempted there backfired spectacularly. The time he replaced the sacred fire with illusionary flames, the fake fire roasted his stolen ambrosia into actual delicious snacks. When he swapped Hestia's bronze poker for a snake, it curled up for a nap on the warm hearthstone. Even his masterpiece, slipping laughing gas into the chimney, only resulted in the most serene, giggly meditation session in divine history. The hearth didn't resist mischief. It domesticated it. The other gods took vicious delight in these failures. Athena kept a scroll tally titled Hermes Versus, Coziness, Futility in Action. Dionysus started a betting pool on how long each attempt would take to unravel. Spoiler, never more than 7 minutes. But the real humiliation came when the hearth itself seemed to retaliate. After one particularly ambitious prank involving fake ashes, Hermes found all his sandal straps perpetually tied together, but only when he entered the hall. The message was clear. Here, chaos bowed to comfort. Historians still argue whether Hestia enchanted the space or if warmth itself had moral priorities. A Boeotian comedy features a chorus of personified fireplace tools mocking Hermes, while fringe alchemical texts claim the hearth smoke could reveal a prankster's truest desire. Apparently, Hermes just wanted someone to braid his hair. The kicker? Hermes kept coming back, not to scheme, but to linger. By the 3rd century BCE, votive offerings near Athenian hearths included tiny winged sandals, not for speed, but for rest. Every mortal home secretly longed to replicate Hestia's hearth, though none could quite capture its magic. Greek housewives would whisper prayers to the goddess while lighting their morning fires, hoping for a spark of that divine warmth. Wealthy Athenians built elaborate marble hearths that stayed cold as tombs without her presence, while poor farmers' cottages with nothing but a clay pit and seasoned olive wood sometimes glowed suspiciously golden for hours. The lesson? Hestia favored intention over opulence. Rituals bloomed like wildflowers around this imitation. New brides carried flames from their mothers' hearths, a direct line of warmth stretching back generations. Babies were introduced to the family fire before they met, extended relatives. Their tiny hands waved through smoke to bind them to the home. And woe betide anyone who let their hearth go out. Neighbors would gossip for weeks about the household that lost its pulse. The worst insult in ancient Greek wasn't son of a dog. It was he who sleeps by dead embers. Historians still argue whether these traditions stemmed from practical need or spiritual yearning. Excavated Cretan homes show identical central hearth placements across millennia, while a controversial Etruscan scroll claims certain fires could recognize bloodlines. The fringe detail? Some ashes were said to retain warmth for generations. An Ephesian merchant family allegedly kept theirs in a bronze urn, still toasty when touched during winter solstices. But the most heartbreaking attempts at replication came from soldiers and travelers. Legionnaires carried hearth coins, as Olympus fell, not with a bang, but with the slow sigh of forgotten embers. Hestia's hearth was the last stronghold of divine warmth. While temples crumbled and gods faded into myth, that golden flame guttered but refused to die. Mortals who stumbled upon the ruins centuries later reported strange phenomena. Frost that wouldn't stick to one particular patch of stones, the ghostly scent of cedar smoke in midsummer, and occasionally, if you sat very still at dusk, the faintest impression of laughter echoing from empty air. The hearth wasn't gone. It was waiting. Some say Vestal virgins carried a spark to Rome, where it burned in Vesta's temple until 394 CE. Others whisper that Hestia herself walked the earth as an old woman tending cottage fires, her poker leaving suspiciously celestial patterns in the ashes. The wildest theory? That the original hearthstone still exists, disguised as an unremarkable rock in some Greek farmer's field, radiating gentle heat that keeps newborn lambs alive during freak snowstorms. Whatever the truth, modern archaeologists get oddly emotional when excavating ancient hearths. One Mycenaean dig team swore their thermoses stayed inexplicably warm when placed near the ruins' fire pit. Historians still argue whether the flame's endurance was magic or metaphor. A Byzantine monk's diary describes finding a fire that asked riddles in a ruined temple, while New Age cults insist the hearth relocated to a secret dimension, coordinates available for 3 easy payments of $19.99. The scholarly consensus? That something your Netflix and chill evenings, your reading nooks bathed in lamplight, even the way you linger over a coffee shop's fireplace, these are all distant echoes of Hestia's hearth. That urge to pause before blowing out a candle, ancient muscle memory, the contentment of a shared meal, stolen divinity. Modern life may have replaced marble hearthstones with radiator panels, but the instinct remains. We still orbit warmth like planets around a miniature sun. Today's sacred fires hide in plain sight. Book clubs are the new symposiums, their wine glasses catching glints of overhead lighting like nectar goblets. Gaming consoles and knitting circles fulfill the same primal need, gathering around a shared source of comfort. Even your phone's nightlight mode owes a debt to Hestia. That reddish hue scientists say doesn't disrupt sleep? Basically, fool's gold compared to her original flame. But we work with what we've got. Historians still argue whether domesticity can inherit divinity. A Kyoto study found people consistently arrange furniture around imaginary hearth points, while Icelandic architects now incorporate coziness algorithms into home designs. The fringe detail? Certain vintage lamps inexplicably emit warmth matching human body temperature. One such artifact sold at Sotheby's as possibly divine before mysteriously vanishing. But here's the secret. Hestia knew all along. You don't need magic to recreate the hearth. Build it in shared silence between old friends, in the weight of a well-loved blanket, in the way you instinctively shift closer to someone else's heat during a movie. The true flame never died. It just learned to live smaller, quieter, in the spaces between our rushing lives. As the last embers of tonight's story fade to a sleepy glow, remember this: the world still holds pockets of Hestia's warmth if you know where to look. That cafe where the barista remembers your order, the library corner where sunlight pools just right in winter, the friend's couch that somehow always has room for you. These are the modern hearths keeping her spirit alive. Close your eyes and picture that Olympian hall one last time. The way shadows danced on marble walls, how laughter sounded softer here, as if the fire itself was absorbing sharp edges. You can almost feel it, can't you? That ancient, unshakable sense of belonging. The certainty that as long as this flame burns somewhere, all is not lost. Breathe deep. Let the memory of divine warmth settle into your bones like afternoon sunlight. However chaotic the world becomes, however cold the nights grow, Hestia's lesson endures. True power isn't in storms or spectacle, but in the quiet act of keeping the home fires burning. For others, for yourself, for futures not yet imagined. Sleep now, wrapped in the oldest comfort there is. The hearth remembers you, even if you've forgotten it.